Hare Krishna, devotees. Welcome to day 35 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto. Yes, and we are in the 12th chapter, and we're starting with verse 28. We're actually starting, it's section 5 of the 12th chapter. Brahma attracted to his daughter. Hare Krishna. Right, so let's get into it. But first of all, let's chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhupya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Right, so devotees, here we go. Section 5 of the 12th chapter. 12th chapter is titled Creation of the Kumars and Others. And the section number 5 is from verse 28 to verse 33. Okay, let's just get into it. It's really, as the title of the section says very clearly, it's a bit of an unusual subject matter, a very unusual situation, but it's Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's get into it. So now the first thing, though, is that rather than just go through everything, verses and purports immediately together, I'm going to go, as usual, go through the verses and then come back and do the verses again with their purports. So, okay, verse 28. And of course it's Maitreya speaking. O Vidura, we have heard that Brahma had a daughter named Vak, who was born from his body, and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. Krishna. Yes, bit of a difficult situation there. Really controversial situation, my Lord. Okay, but anyway, we're reading through the verses. First of all, let's just have a look now at verse 29. Thus, finding their father so deluded in an act of immorality, the sages headed by Marichi, all sons of Brahma, spoke as follows with great respect. Verse 30. So those sons of Brahma headed by Marichi, we just read how they just appeared just yesterday. So they said in verse 30, O Father, this performance in which you're endeavoring to complicate yourself was never attempted by any other Brahma, nor by anyone else, nor by you in previous kalpas, nor will anyone dare to attempt it in the future. You are the supreme being in the universe. So how is it that you want to have sex with your daughter and cannot control your desire? Amazing situation, isn't it? Just incredibly amazing situation. Verse 31, even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you because your character is followed for spiritual improvement by people in general. Really, you are great authority and great example for so many. So how could you do this? Verse 32, and again this is the Son speaking. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who by his own effulgence, while situated in himself, has manifested this cosmos. May he also protect religion from all goodness. Okay, that's a slightly unusual statement. Let's carry on though. Verse 33. So now the sons have, I mean, it's just in a nutshell, presented their extreme concern to Brahma. So now the father of all Prajapatis, Brahma, thus seeing all his Prajapati sons speaking in that way, became very much ashamed and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness. All right, so let's go back and go through in more detail. So Brahma attracted to his daughter, verse 28, to verse 33. Verse 28. O Vidura, we have heard that Brahma had a daughter named Vak, who was born from his body and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. So yes, there's a substantial purport here. Not massive, but good, solid purport, because it's really quite a solid subject matter. First of all, Srila Prabhupada refers to and partially quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th Canto, chapter 19, verse 17. Let me just read the Sanskrit couple of lines he quotes. Balavan indriya gramo vidvamsam api karhichit. So Prabhupada basically paraphrases that the senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and learned man. Yes, so, of course we can imagine many people hearing this, what we just read, the verse itself, how Brahma had this daughter born from his body, but she attracted his mind towards sex, even though she had no interest in him in that way. We can imagine people thinking, well, this is something just too degraded. And I'm sure we can imagine many people thinking, we would never do this. Many men. We would never do such a thing. But Brahma, of all people, Brahma, he did. I mean, at least he became attracted. So anyway, the first point is, and this is what Prabhupada has said, that, or referring to this Bhagavatam verse, 9:19-17, the senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even, Prabhupada says, the most sensible and learned man. And Lord Brahma certainly has to be in that category or those categories. So what to do? What to do? Well, one essential thing, which is like a very foundational component in the picture of what to do, is, Prabhupada says, that it is advised that one should not indulge in living alone, even with one's mother, sister, or daughter. And again, some people will say, well, I would never do such a thing. And yeah, I mean, we don't want to comment on that, but certainly we can imagine many men who would say that, what's the problem? Being with your mother, sister, or daughter alone. But the thing is, Krishna consciousness involves the highest standards, the very highest standards. And what to speak of someone actually becoming really, really attracted to the point like Brahma, he actually runs after her, he pursues her physically. Amazing. But even if they're just thoughts of these things, then, and even the person doesn't do anything at all, but just if there's thoughts of these things, it's so terribly degrading. And if in the perhaps unlikely event of people finding out that the man thought of doing these things, or some or one of these things, what embarrassment would be there? It would be there just destroying. Yeah, so the thing is that we should always stay in the company of devotees, not live alone. Always stay in the company of devotees, and never ever mix in the company of the opposite sex alone. Never. Yeah. Because you never know. You never know what crazy ideas might suddenly just sort of pounce on you that you'd never had before, and you never thought you could possibly have. But it's the material world, and as Prabhupada says, the senses are so mad and strong, they can do these things. Actually, I remember few years ago, I mean, this is a bit material, but there was one American politician, I don't know if it was Mr. Cheney, I think his name was Cheney or Cheney, who had been vice president of America. But anyway, it was one of those people in his group, or him. And he said that I never travel without my wife. I never travel without my wife. And I remember seeing something where someone commented on that. I mean, another sort of important political figure. And that person commenting said that actually this is very good. And when he said that, it made me think of this. Anyway, let's just carry on. Let us carry on. But even though it's so extreme, like in a sense, it's the most extreme thing we've come across so far in our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar, the whole thing. But even though it's so extreme, here we are getting a specific warning, and we must heed the warning, we must listen to the warning and act upon it by maintaining the proper standards. So, right, let's continue on through the purport. We're in the first paragraph still, and Srila Prabhupada quotes the verse itself. Does he? No. Oh, no. Sorry, he refers back to this other Bhagavatam verse from the 9th canto. Vidvamsam apikarshati means that even the most learned also become victims of the sensuous urge. Yeah, even the most learned. So, and Prabhupada makes the point, Maitreya hesitated to say this of Brahma in regards to this incident, but still mentioned it because it sometimes happens. Even with someone as elevated as Brahma and devotees who are doing our Bhakti Vaibhava course, please remember very clearly that if it can happen to Lord Brahma, it can happen to you and me, to any of us. Right, so I mean, the point obviously is that if it can happen to Brahma, it can happen to anyone. So now, but Prabhupada makes a very interesting, important point here. Still in the first paragraph, just after the halfway point, that this extraordinary, let me just read what it says here. This extraordinary immorality on the part of Brahma was heard to have occurred in some particular kalpa, but it could not have happened in the kalpa in which Brahma heard directly from the Lord the 4 essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Lord blessed Brahma after giving him lessons on the Bhagavatam that he would never be bewildered in any kalpa whatsoever. So, Prabhupada makes the point that this indicates that before the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, he might have fallen a victim to such sensuality, but after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there was no possibility of such failures. Yes, right. Well, anyway, we could just mention as a sort of, well, just a point of interest. It's a side point, you could say, a point of interest, that in the 11th canto, there's a description of 4 types of Brahmas. The first type is the pure devotee type. Now, our Brahma, this is our Brahma who's being described here, actually. But now, later, not at the time or any connected with the time when this happened, but later on, after he heard the Bhagavatam and became situated on the highest level of pure devotional service. So now our Brahma, this is our Brahma, who is now on the level of topmost pure devotional service. He's an example of that, the pure devotee Brahma. But then there's a second type of Brahma who is not exactly a devotee. He's a very pious person, and he's obedient to the Lord. He's not just going to go off and start, enjoying life independently. Even though he's not really a devotee, but he's willing to do what the Lord says. And actually, he is an expert materialist, expert at manipulating the material nature. So therefore, he's expert at putting the creation together. So he's the second type, the expert materialist who is cooperative, but not exactly a devotee. Then the third type is similar, the same sort of person, except he's a jnani. He's a great scholar and just extremely knowledgeable about this, that, and everything that you can think about, and many things that you can't think about. Yeah. Let me just read this. It is Srimad Bhagavatam 11.3.12. Let me just read this is a few sentences from the purport of 11.3.12. So in this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has pointed out that there are 3 categories within the status of Brahma. We said 4, don't worry, but here he says 3. Namely, those of karmi, jnani, and devotee. A Brahma, who is the most exalted karmi of the universe, will have to come back to the material world. A living entity who's achieved the post of Brahma by being the greatest speculative philosopher within the universe may attain impersonal liberation at the end of his life as Brahma. And a living entity who's been awarded the post of Brahma due to being a great devotee of the Lord enters into the personal abode of the Lord. Then Bhagavatam 3:32-15 talks of even another case, a Brahma who is a devotee of the Lord, but who has the tendency to think himself independent of or equal to the Lord. Yeah. So he may achieve Mahavishnu's abode at the time of annihilation. But when the creation begins again, he has to return and again take the post of Brahma. So there you go, devotees. That's a little background, because this is now, we got to consider the situation, don't we, with Lord Brahma. All right, so here we go. Let's carry on. Right. So this, anyway, for our Brahma, who's now a pure devotee, it must have happened before he became a pure devotee, before he heard Bhagavatam from the Lord. Because when the Lord taught him the Bhagavatam, ninth chapter of the 2nd canto, the Lord blessed him. You will never become bewildered in any kalpa. So before hearing the Bhagavatam, he might fall victim to this. But after, you would have to say, Prabhupada says, after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there was no possibility of such failures. Right. So on to the second paragraph. So Prabhupada says that we must take serious note of this. We are social beings, and unrestricted mixing leads to downfall. Such freedom, especially for the young, is a great stumbling block spiritually. Material bondage is due, Prabhupada says, is due only to sexual bondage. So unrestricted association is a great impediment. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Maitreya cited this example on the part of Brahma just to bring to our notice this great danger. Right, fine, so let's carry on. Verse 29. Thus, finding their father so deluded in an act of immorality, the sages headed by Marichi, all sons of Brahma, spoke as follows with great respect. That's interesting. He is their father. He is their spiritual master. He's the most senior person in the universe. And now he's done this ridiculous thing. It's just too far-fetched completely. But still, they speak with great respect to him. So Prabhupada makes the point that they were not wrong in protesting. Yes, pointing out their father's fault. They were not wrong. You know, in some quarters, there's the idea, if some, big person apparently does something that they really shouldn't have done, but in some quarters there's the idea, don't say anything. Don't say anything because, they may get on your case and you may get into trouble, even though you didn't do anything, but you just pointed out how this person did something that perhaps they shouldn't have done. So, interesting. Let's just see what Prabhupada says here. They knew that even though it was wrong, there was still some great purpose behind it. Otherwise, someone so great could not make a mistake like that. That's amazing. Maybe Brahma wanted to show the danger of associating with women, which is always dangerous for those who are trying for self-realization. And therefore, Prabhupada makes a very important point. Therefore, great persons like Brahma should not be neglected even when they are wrong. Yes, even when they're in the wrong. And so Brahma should not be neglected and just sort of, treated like, we don't take him seriously any longer. So people like him, if they do something wrong, shouldn't just be neglected like that. And nor should the sages headed by Marichi show any disrespect because of his extraordinary behavior. Okay, we carry on. Verse 30. O Father, this performance in which you're endeavoring to complicate yourself was never attempted by any other Brahma, nor by anyone else, nor by you in previous kalpas, nor will anyone dare to attempt it in the future. You are the supreme being in the universe. So how is it that you want to have sex with your daughter and cannot control your desire? Prabhupada makes the point. I mean, it's a very clear point. The post of Brahma is so high, supermost in the universe. And of course, there are many Brahmas in many universes. But the person who fills such a post must be ideal in behavior to set an example for all living entities. And then Prabhupada says that Brahma, the living entity, who is the most pious and spiritually elevated, is entrusted with a post next to that of the personality of Godhead. All right, so on to verse 31. So the sons continue. Even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you, because your character is followed for spiritual improvement by people in general. In other words, so many people look to your example and they think, well, Brahma did this, I must do that. But not this, but generally. It's just like, it goes without saying that if Brahma did like this in a certain situation, that means we must do like that. And it's not like, should we, shouldn't we, what do you all think? No, you just do it. So Prabhupada makes some interesting points here, gosh. It is said that a supremely powerful entity can do anything and it will not affect him. For example, the sun evaporates water from dirty places and is not affected by the filth. So actually, Brahma, same with Brahma, similarly, Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. That's incredible, isn't it? But seeing he's the spiritual master of all living entities, his behavior should be ideal. So people will follow and benefit. Therefore, he shouldn't have done that. Even if somehow he was not contaminated by doing it or sort of entertaining the idea, still he shouldn't have done it. Verse 32. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who, by his own effulgence, while situated in himself, has manifested this cosmos. May he also protect religion for all goodness. Okay, I was wondering about that. Protect religion for all goodness. But I get the idea. So anyway, Prabhupada goes on. Lust for sex is so strong that it seems here that Brahma could not be dissuaded from it by his sons like Marichi. Isn't that amazing? He still remained attached to that idea. So therefore the sons, headed by Marichi, prayed to the Lord for good sense. For Lord Brahma, please, Lord, give our father, Lord Brahma, good sense. And ultimately the fact is that it's only by the grace of the Lord that one can be protected from such attractions. Yeah. So actually, the Lord protects the devotees who are fully engaged in devotional service, and he mercifully forgives accidental fall downs. So Prabhupada concludes the purport, therefore sages like Marichi prayed for the mercy of the Lord, and their prayer was fruitful. Right. Okay, so on we go to verse 33. The father of all Prajapatis, Brahma, thus seeing all his Prajapati sons speaking in that way, became very much ashamed, and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness. Sure. Okay. So there's a bit of an extensive purport here. Let's see. Oh, not so long actually. 3 short paragraphs. So Prabhupada makes the point that if one has done something sinful, best way to compensate for it is to give up one's body immediately. And so Brahma did that. Even though he just thought about it, but he gave up that body. Yes. So, of course we are reminded from the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, we are reminded of the famous incident of Junior Haridas. I think you're all familiar with that. Let me just very briefly mention it, that amongst Lord Chaitanya's associates in Puri, there were 2 Haridasas. One was Haridas Thakur, so he's the senior Haridas. And then there was a younger man, also named Haridas, but he was known as Junior Haridas. And he was an associate of Lord Chaitanya. So one day, he went out to beg ingredients for cooking for Lord Chaitanya's lunch. So one place he went to was the place of Sikhi Mahiti, whose sister was an elderly lady and great devotee, but still a woman. So in the description in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the way it appears is that Junior Haridas went there, asked, could you please spare some rice for the Lord's lunch? She went in, got some rice, came out, handed over the rice. That was it. But as this was going on, somehow, even though she's an elderly lady, in his mind, some contemplation arose. Some sort of touch of sexual attraction. It appears towards her, even though she's elderly and he's a younger man. So Lord Chaitanya, when Junior Haridas came, Lord Chaitanya really chastised him very heavily for this, developing some sexual attraction in the course of devotional service. Lord Chaitanya chastised him that you shouldn't do that, you must not do that, do not do it again. But then he rejected him from his association. He said, never, you'll never see me again. In this life, I won't take your association, you won't get my association ever again. So Junior Haridas, he accepted that. He had no choice. But he became so sort of distraught that he decided to commit suicide, and he did so. He committed suicide. And when Lord Chaitanya was told that he had committed suicide, Lord Chaitanya said, yes, that was the right thing to do. But then in some sort of, subtle body, shall we say, in some sort of subtle body, Junior Haridas, who was actually a great singer, a kirtan singer, he would come at night sometimes in this, special, subtle body and sing for Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya appreciated that. So in other words, in due course, he would be completely reunited with Lord Chaitanya. So anyway, there you go, devotees. The verse says that Lord Brahma gave up the body. Prabhupada says if you do something really sinful, best way to make up for it is give up your body. And Brahma did this, even though he'd just been thinking about it. So this is a lesson for us. My gosh, what a lesson for us. Yeah, that particularly unrestricted, any illicit sex, particularly unrestricted sex life, Prabhupada says, is just so sinful. Even to think of it is sinful. So therefore Prabhupada says, one's duration of life, blessings, opulence, etc., are decreased by sinful acts. And the most dangerous type of sinful act is unrestricted sex. Okay, so now there's a short third paragraph. Let's have a look at that. So, Prabhupada makes the point, ignorance is the cause of sinful life. Or alternatively, it's interesting, or sinful life is the cause of ignorance. They both sort of feed each other. Sinful life is the cause of gross ignorance. And the feature of ignorance is darkness or fog. And darkness or fog, it still covers this whole universe. And the only thing which counteracts it, or can, is the sun. So, Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, one who takes shelter of the Lord, the perpetual light, has no fear of being annihilated in the darkness of fog or ignorance. Right, so devotees, that's the end of that section. Let us go on to section 6, verse 34 to verse 48, which we've titled Brahma Establishes Vedic Knowledge. So it's a big section. It's a very big section. Let us read through all the verses first, and then we'll come back. We'll see how much time we have left. But yeah, we should have time. We'll have time to read through a few verses. Right, okay, so verse 34 to verse 48, Brahma establishes Vedic knowledge. It's section 6, and here's verse 34. Once upon a time, when Brahma was thinking of how to create the worlds as in the past millennium, the 4 Vedas, which contain all varieties of knowledge, became manifested from his 4 mouths. Okay. 35. The 4 kinds of paraphernalia for conducting the fire sacrifice became manifest. And the 4 things are the performer or the chanter, the offerer, the fire, and the action performed in terms of the supplementary Vedas. The supplementary Vedas in this context really, at least it appears to refer to the Brahmanas and Aranyakas, and maybe to some degree to the Upanishads, but particularly Brahmanas and Aranyakas, which explain details of the sacrifices which are there in the main parts of the 4 Vedas. All right, but let me carry on. Also, the 4 principles of religiosity, truth, austerity, mercy, and cleanliness, and the duties in the 4 social orders all became manifest. Okay, so anyway, let's carry on reading. Verse 36, Vidura said, O great sage, whose only wealth is penance, kindly explain to me how and with whose help Brahma established the Vedic knowledge which emanated from his mouth. 37, Maitreya said, beginning from the front face of Brahma, gradually the 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, became manifest. Thereafter, Vedic hymns, which had not been pronounced before, priestly rituals, the subject matters of the recitation, and transcendental activities were all established one after another. 38. He also created the medical science, military art, musical art, and architectural science, all from the Vedas. They all emanated one after another, beginning from the front face. 39. This is very interesting. Then he created the 5th Veda, the Puranas and the histories, from all his mouths, since he could see all the past, present, and future. Verse 40. All the different varieties of fire sacrifices, Shodashi, Ukta, Purishi, Agnishtoma, Aptaryama, Atiratra, Vajapaya, and Gosava. So these are different types of fire sacrifices, became manifested from the eastern mouth of Brahma. Okay, verse 41. Education, charity, penance, and truth are said to be the 4 legs of religion. And to learn this, there are 4 orders of life with different classifications of castes according to vocation. Brahma created all these in systematic order. Right, so verse 42. Then the thread ceremony for the twice-born was inaugurated, as were the rules to be followed for at least 1 year after acceptance of the Vedas, rules for observing complete abstinence from sex life, vocations in terms of Vedic injunctions, various professional duties in household life, and the method of maintaining a livelihood without anyone's cooperation by picking up rejected grains. Interesting. Verse 43. The 4 divisions of retired life means the vanaprasthas. 4 divisions are the Vaikanasas, Valakilyas, Audumbaras, and Penapas. The 4 divisions of the renounced order of life, sannyas, are the Kutichakas, Bhavodas, Hangsas, and Nishkriyas. All these were manifested from Brahma. 44. The science of logical argument, the Vedic goals of life, and also law and order, moral codes, and the celebrated hymns Bhubhava and Swa, all became manifested from the mouths of Brahma, and the Pranava Omkar was manifested from his heart. 45. Thereafter, the art of literary expression, Ushnik, was generated from the hairs on the body of the almighty Prajapati, Brahma. The principal Vedic hymn, Gayatri, was generated from the skin, Trishtup from the flesh, Anushtup from the veins, and Jagati from the bones of the Lord of the living entities. 46. The art of writing verse, Bhakti, became manifested from the bone marrow, and that of Brihati, another type of verse, was generated from the life breath of the Lord of the living entities. 47. Brahma's soul was manifested as the touch alphabets. His body as the vowels, his senses as the sibilant alphabets, his strength as the intermediate alphabets, and his sensual activities as the 7 notes of music. Sure, Krishna. Amazing. So, verse 48, which is the last verse in this section, and then we'll go back and read through 2 or 3 or whatever of the verses with their purports. Right, so verse 48, Brahma is the personal representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the source of transcendental sound, and is therefore above the conception of manifested and unmanifested. Brahma means Lord Brahma, is the complete form of the absolute truth, and is invested with multifarious energies. Well, isn't that amazing? After hearing about what happened with the daughter, or at least what he was thinking about in relation to the daughter, but anyway, looks like he just completely recovered himself All right, so devotees, we have another 4 or 5 minutes. Let's just go back here and start going through the verses with their purports. So, right, so it's section 6, Brahma establishes Vedic knowledge, and it's verse 34 to verse 48. 34. Once upon a time when Brahma was thinking of how to create the worlds as in the past millennium, the 4 Vedas, which contain all varieties of knowledge, became manifested from his 4 mouths. Okay. So Prabhupada makes a point here. It's very important about how Brahma has become great again, or his greatness has manifested again. Prabhupada says, as fire consumes anything and is not contaminated, by the grace of the Lord, the fire of Brahma's greatness consumed his sinful sex desire for his daughter. Right. Just like the fire of devotional service can consume our material desires and cleanse us so we can become fixed in Krishna consciousness. So the fire of his greatness consumed that desire, and it was gone, it was done. So Prabhupada continues, the Vedas, of course, they're the source of all knowledge. They were first revealed to Brahma by the grace of the Lord, while Brahma was thinking of recreating the material world. So Lord Brahma, Prabhupada makes the point, he's powerful by dint of his devotional service. Yes, through not just some mystical power, some magical power, certainly not just some physical strength, but he is powerful, very powerful, by dint of his devotional service. And plus, on the other hand, the Lord is always ready to forgive a devotee if by chance the devotee falls from the path of devotional service. So that's confirmed. Prabhupada quotes Bhagavatam 11.5.42 is actually a very important verse. I'll just read the translation. Any person who's engaged 100% in the transcendental loving service of the Lord at his lotus feet is very dear to the personality of Godhead Hari, and the Lord, being situated in the heart of the devotee, excuses all kinds of sins committed by chance. And so anyway, Prabhupada continues, of course it's unexpected that someone like Brahma would think of sex with his daughter, but it just shows the power of material nature. It acts on everyone, it even acts on Brahma. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Brahma was saved by the mercy of the Lord with a little punishment. The punishment was the confrontation by his own sons. Yeah. But by the grace of the Lord, he didn't lose his prestige as the great Brahma. So let's see. Let me do verse 35. The 4 kinds of paraphernalia for conducting the fire sacrifice became manifest, and they are the performer, the chanter, the offerer, the fire, and the action performed in terms of the supplementary Vedas. They're different. The basic yajna is described in the 4 Vedas in the Samhitas, but then the Brahmanas and Aranyakas particularly talk about some secondary things, some details. of the performance of the yajnas, the fire sacrifices. Also, the 4 principles of religiosity, truth, austerity, mercy, and cleanliness, and the duties in the 4 social orders all became manifest. So Srila Prabhupada elaborates. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are the 4 principles of material bodily demands common to humans and animals. So to distinguish, because they both do those things, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, in a certain sense you can't distinguish animals from humans by considering those things. But to distinguish between humans and animals, there is religion in terms of social status and orders of life. It means in terms of varnashram. And that's clearly there in the Vedic literatures. So they were that was manifest by Brahma when the 4 Vedas were generated from his 4 mouths. And in this way, the duties of these different orders were established for civilized people. And Prabhupada concludes the purport of verse 35 by saying, those who traditionally follow these principles are called Aryans, or progressive human beings. So there you go, devotees. We will continue from here tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.